Welcome to Shift, a college admissions ACT, SAT, and CLT podcast for a changing world. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have affordable ACT and CLT courses that include everything you need to ace your exam: a full textbook, tons of review questions backed by our memory enhancing algorithm, videos on key topics, a built in study planner, and full length practice exams. You can get a free trial by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code podcast to get 10% off. Now, let's get started. Today we've got Shellee Howard from College Ready. And Shellee, I'd love if you could introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. So, as Tyler mentioned, my name is Shellee Howard, and I am the founder and CEO of College Ready. I've had the opportunity of helping families navigate the college admissions process. This is my 18th application season. So, for those of you who are approaching it for the first time, enjoy it. It's not as bad as you might think. As far as my qualifications go, I am an international speaker. I am a two-time best-selling author, and my claim to fame is the book, How to Send Your Student to College Without Losing Your Mind or Your Money. All four of my young adults have graduated college completely debt-free. Son attended Harvard. Next one went to Alabama. Next one went to San Francisco. And the fourth one just graduated 3 weeks ago from the Czech Republic of Prague.
Wow.
And she got an international business degree. So I truly have walked in your shoes, parents, and I am here to provide support, encouragement, and inspire you to enjoy these last few years with your child at home because at Thanksgiving, you want them to come back. So I'm looking forward to sharing this information with you.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about part of the aspect that you mentioned was that all four of your kids are graduating while being debt free. And I think that unless you're literally paying out of pocket for all four of them because you're loaded, I feel like it's pretty unusual for people to do that, especially with four kids. And so I want to basically open the floor by talking about just like college debt and student loans generally. I think one of the big things that you see come up a fair amount is this idea that it's inevitable and that kind of, for the most part, unless you are really rich, like you usually have to take on debt or your child has to take on debt. There are obviously, for the people that really need it, there's like FAFSA and need based scholarships. But I think that's something that maybe is not talked about as often is either merit based scholarships or alternative ways of looking at the problem. So I'd love if you could start things off like when you're having this conversation with parents as part of your practice, how do you tee things off?
So I think the first and most important thing to think about is having this discussion as a family. And that's the first thing that gets missed is nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room, how much it's going to cost. Everybody's just concerned about how are they going to get in, right? Because if they don't get in, we don't have to worry about how much it's going to cost. So I always like to start families very gently and say, what's most important to your family? The academic fit, finding the best school. Does your child want to fight for every A? Or do they want to have a few B's and enjoy themselves? And then we have the social fit. Is your child going to be amongst their friends? Are they going to have the alumni to support them when they graduate? And then we get into the financial fit. And I said, are you looking to write a check and just happy to do? Are you one of those people who fall into the middle tier that you make too much but not enough? And everybody starts to shake their head. Yes, that's the one. Are you need based? Because that does make a difference. And every single parent says yes. And I'm like, no, which one is most important to you? So they would like all three. I get that. And as soon as I can help them to get clarity and help the family prioritize, can they pay for college if the student gets in? Because if families can't, we need to make sure that they apply to very generous colleges, right? There's some colleges that are they're amazing at giving money. And then there are really stingy ones. And so if your family is one of those people that money is important. We have to create, we have to make your college list something that is strategic. Think of it like this, parents. Put on your business mind. If you walked up to a home to purchase, would you pull out the flyer and say, yep, that's the price I'm going to pay? Maybe in California, but very few other places, right? You would want to do some negotiation, get an appraisal, make sure you're spending your money wisely. But why is it that parents go on a website or they Google it, which is scary, and they're like, oh, that's it, we can't afford it. But what they're not considering is their child marketable? Does that student have a resume that they're going to throw money at? So it's not just merit based, it's actually the entire strategy, the overall profile that makes a student unique and valuable. Getting your first job is another way to look at it. If you have no job experience, you get minimum wage. If you come to a college with very little on your resume, you're not getting money. If you come with a beautiful resume, they're going to throw money at you because it's a competitive environment. Everybody wants the best. So that's how we have to start. It's all about mindset, and it's all about getting families to really talk about what is important. And we start doing this as young as middle school. Most families think about high school or college like when they did their junior or senior year. That's not going to cut it in this day and age. So hopefully that gives you an idea of where you need to start.
Yeah, and let's talk about that then. Certainly, I think the more prepared you are, the better, which generally means the earlier you start, probably the better. But there's two facets to what you're talking about, right? Like the first is basically the whole concept of starting to plan even in middle school for what your, let's say, high school career is going to look like. But then the second part of it is like, what is it going to look like? What does your kid want to do? Are they allowed to experiment and try things, right? And they're not just locked into getting a computer science degree from sixth grade. And then what are the big picture things that you want to be planning around while still allowing for your kid to be a kid?
Wow, that's a podcast in itself, that one question, but I will try to condense it down for the listener.
Yeah.
So again, it's all about how you think of this. If you think about it as getting into Harvard is the only option, it's going to be a very stressful path, regardless of who you are. I've never told one child ever that you're in. There's no doubt about it that 100% you're into Harvard, right? And so it's really reverse engineering it. And what I mean by that is start to help your child see college as they would a next stepping stone. So when students are in elementary school and you take them to a science museum or you take them to an art gallery or you whatever exposure, travel. When you're traveling, walk onto a campus. Start talking about this is what college is very different than middle school and high school. You get to pick what days you want to go. You get to pick what major, what you want to study, and you just get excited. And they're like, that sounds amazing. Some may say, wave the little carrot in front of them. And then you get into the next piece, which is really helping them figure out the first thing we do when we bring on a new student is we help them to know what is their core values, their gifts, their talents, and what do they advocate for. And then we say, now we need to prove it. Because the number one thing in the US colleges want is they want to know who you are and what matters to you. So we're setting them up gently for self exploration, which is going to make them a better adult and it's going to make life a lot easier. The next stage is we take all that we've learned and we can show them careers that they may never have heard of. If they don't know somebody doing it, then we take it a step further and we show them this is how much money you will make right out of school. We're talking return on investment of the education. And they're like, $30,000, that's huge. I'm going to be rich. And the parents are like fading in the background, going, oh my gosh, this is going to be long. And then we get into, and in 4 years, AI is going to be doing that job. It's quiet on the call.
Yeah, that is basically a nice segue into the next point that I have, or the next question I have, which is what is a marketable resume? You basically, I think, have touched on there are some big picture things, regardless of what specialty you're going into, that make a resume marketable. And I'm curious if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about the resume, the CV, what's going to help your child stand out? It needs to have synergy. If your child's taking all chemistry classes and they decide to be an English major, they're scratching their head. They're like, what in the world is going on here? So you want to be leaning in. What are those things, the classes, the subjects? What are those things that your child is naturally gifted at? And how can you highlight that while also taking the things that maybe are a struggle and you minimize them? You don't try to exhaust them by taking 15 APs if they are
Mhm.
not that student. I have had students successfully take 15, but it's not the norm. So once you decide, and I'm telling you, child one and child two and child three, they're all going to be different. So you can't approach this as a one size fits all. You need to really lean into that specific child. So I learned this as a mom of four. I have two boys and two girls. And if I would have done what I did with child one, child two would have definitely had emotional issues. He was a self motivated, self starter, driven, like I had to hold him back. Number two fought really hard for her B pluses. So I want you to really be thinking about how do we help the child to be successful now in college and in the future? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's a bit of both, right? I think that maybe my addition to what you're saying is that what colleges want to see is not what maybe we grew up with, which is this idea of the well rounded candidate. What they would rather see now is someone that's very focused on something and then has doubled down on that through joining clubs related to that thing, taking classes related to that thing, doing internships related to that thing, like maybe like other extracurricular things beyond that. A lot of people now are recommending doing like some kind of, I don't want to say passion project 'cause it's not quite the word, but some kind of basically like project that you just do basically for
And
college admissions.
yeah, that piece is critical. I wouldn't pass over that quickly. Passion with a Purpose project got him into Harvard. He didn't have
Right.
the perfect test score. He didn't have the perfect GPA. It was good, don't get me wrong. It was solid, but it wasn't a perfect one.
Yeah.
And his essay was no doubt the icing on the cake. And that really solidified. He had 7 full ride offers. And the essay was the thing. And it was really because he wanted to be a doctor. He had proven that he had a servant's heart. You don't apply to be a doctor and never helped anyone. People, it's counterintuitive. So you want to be thinking, one, I want to help my child experience before they spend the next 4, 6, 8, 12 years so they can say, yes, for sure, that's what I want to do. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful I did not invest my time and energy. So we do create individual passion with a purpose projects. Every one of our students has a unique strategy, and that is the secret sauce that many people are mystified because they don't know how to do it. If everybody did, then it wouldn't be that special. So it's a catch 22, but we have found that is a necessary part of the application. It's no longer just an addition.
Yeah. And I'd love to dig into that a little bit. So, this is consistent with what I've heard other people talk about. And I think that starting planning in middle school is great. Giving them the space and opportunity to figure out what they're passionate about, also great. I think maybe even necessary. And then you've got to really dig in. An ideal candidate for just getting into college generally, but also for scholarships, is somebody that's like clearly showing genuine interest in it and going above and beyond anyway. It's the old adage that, like, you know, if you don't need them, they want you more kind of thing.
Mm.
If you're going to go change the world and be a difference making marine biologist, like, you're going to do that whether or not you go to Harvard. Harvard will want you a lot more because of that. And so I'm curious, what advice do you have for how to set up and structure these kind of passion projects? And
Mhm.
I know that it's hard maybe to give generalist advice on that, but I think that would be the first thing. And the second thing is, how do you, if possible, angle that even more towards scholarships and reducing the cost of college?
They go hand in hand. You don't even have to angle it. If you do it well, the money just comes. All four of my own children did the community service big money path, so I can speak to. You show you care, and there's a lot of money. Um, what I will say to the how. The first step is don't have your child sign up and show up for any service. It does nobody any good. It's more like punishment. It's like chores. It's like homework. You're like forcing them to serve and they don't even want to be there. So the next thing you want to be cautious of is don't have them do your passion. The worst thing that a parent can do is go, I really love knitting. I think we should knit blankets for puppies. And the young man's going, I have no desire to knit a blanket. I want to go shoot some hoops or run whatever. And
Right.
it's well-meaning. It is well-meaning. I've done it with my own kids. And we're just trying to give them ideas. Try this. But what you really need to do is you need to have somebody other than yourself. Sorry, parents, but you hire people to babysit your kids, somebody else who doesn't have an opinion of them to help reflect back. So tell me, what do you enjoy? What if I gave you a Saturday morning with nothing to do and you had all the money, all the resources, all the time, what would get you out of bed in the morning? See, if you're a parent, they already know you're saying gaming, computer, cell phone. So you have to pick somebody else. So I have a
Yeah,
total,
you're not going to get into a competitive school by being like, I really want to be a Twitch streamer. It's just not going to work, even
right.
if it's true.
Yeah. And so because college applications ask, how many years did you do it? How many hours per week and how many weeks per year? They want to know when you're not in high school, what are you doing? And so there's no hiding from it. So we start truly with no expression other than a smile at every response. And there's some pretty doozers, some pretty interesting ones. But we make them do 10. 3 is easy for anybody. I like this. But when you get to 7, 8, 9, and 10, oh, they're really struggling to come up with it. And that's where the genius starts because they're really pushing themselves to think deeply. Then we switch to advocacy. What do you want to see changed in the world? If you could make any of these changes, what would it be? And at first they would say, tell my siblings to shut up. And then we all laugh. And then we get serious. And once we have the passion and we have the annoyance, then I can help them with an exercise that matches them. So they're like, yes, that's it. Yes, that's it. Yes, I want to do that. That sounds amazing. But here's the trick. A passion project is not them doing another thing. It's them leading others to create the change they want to see.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
way harder.
Yeah, tell me a bit more about that. When you say leading others, the first thing I think of is, so start a club, right? That seems like an easy way to do
Right.
that, but I don't think that's necessarily always what you mean by that.
No, that's opposite of what I mean. If it's easy, colleges are not impressed. Anything that's easy, you might as well just cross it right off your list. On the Common App, there's 10 activities, honors, and awards. On the University of California app, there's 20. So if you're going for easy and you're just putting down easy peasy all the way down, guess what? You're not getting in. You need to be thinking, what is me? What can I do? And I'll give you an example because I can see the perplexity on your face. Tell me, Shellee. So, how it works is colleges want to see an international project, a national, a regional, a local, then a school club. So, if you're going and making a Pokemon club at your school and you're leading it, guess what? I hope you're having fun because it's not going to help you. So,
Right.
you want to be thinking, my daughter, my second born, she had a huge passion for fashion. And for the longest time, she told me she was going to fashion school. And we had debates that I was not paying for that fashion school. And lo and behold, she figured out a way to use her passion of fashion to create the change she wanted to see in the world. So I took my firstborn to Kenya, Africa. I needed to see if he wanted to be a doctor for the DR or if he had the heart of a true servant, which he did, and is now an orthopedic surgeon. So he and I saw things that nobody can even imagine. Our pictures when we came home just motivated my daughter. She saw children with torn clothes and no shoes and just nothing of their own. And she says, Mom, how will they ever grow up confident? How will they ever grow up believing that they can do anything they want? And I said, What are you going to do about it? So she got on YouTube, taught herself how to sew. She got all the neighbors to donate gently used pillowcases. She sewed them into pretty little dresses. She contacted friends from 7 other schools and expanded this into a global outreach. She then worked with Doctors Without Borders, who delivered the dresses, took pictures, sent them to her, and that was her story of how she took these little people with nothing and tears of joy that they got their very first pretty little dress. Do you see the difference between starting a club at school?
I think there's a lot of follow through, right? I think
It's
it's follow
hard.
through and a lot of actual like meaningful impact. I think the big thing with okay, I started the club at school or three is okay, there was maybe impact in your school community, like great, right? You might have provided a place for people who are interested in robotics or fashion to meet, but it's not really like an impact on the wider world and certainly not trying to help those who need it. So I think that is a really good example of kind of how you can deepen the richness of what you're doing. I'm also curious, you mentioned a couple of times, and I think it's worth digging in a little bit on how you would advise that it is in some service to the greater good, right? That
Yeah.
what your student is doing is not just for a project, that you look to have some sort of social good angle to it. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that can help also with the application process?
So, this is what I want you to think about. If you were college admissions and you didn't serve your community at all, you're looking at somebody who cares about themselves. So when they come to your school, they're going to take the education and they're going to leave. They're not going to enrich your school. They're not going to make your school better. They're not going to grow the clubs. They're not going to build friendships. They're not going to go into the alumni group. They're selfish. They're not what the college is looking for. So by
Mhm.
showing that you could collaborate, that you can lead, that you're tenacious, that you're doing something that's meaningful, isn't that who they want at the university?
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. The next thing I want to ask about, I do want to make sure that we don't just get stuck on the project thing and go back to talking about how it relates to scholarships. And I think that
Mhm.
that is basically the big thing that you're doing all this for at the end of the day is scholarships to an extent. Obviously, also because you care about the problem and you're trying to help, but with relation to this episode. And that is one of the biggest ways to reduce the price of college. So I'm curious, kind of with this approach where you're trying to build a great story and have that lead to scholarships, what types of scholarships are you gunning for? It's merit based, sure, but is it just working with the school, or are you also applying to nationwide scholarships or niche scholarships within a certain field? And how to basically walk through that process. What are you looking for, and then how should you go find it?
So it's yes and. It's not either or. It depends how much money you want or need. If you're looking for a full ride, it's yes and yes. If you're looking for just a little pocket money to go out to a football game, then it's a single yes. But here's an example. My son did about 1,200 service hours and he won the Coca-Cola scholarship because of it. Not the pure number. That wasn't the impressive part. It's the depth and the reach. So Coca-Cola believes in serving your community. $25,000 a year for 4 years is a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
That makes total sense to me versus going and chasing $100 here and $100 there. But really, here's the thing, parents, the big money, I'm talking the really big money, comes from picking the right college list. That's it.
Mm,
Everybody wants the secret sauce. The problem is you have no idea who the generous colleges are. And
right.
after doing this 18 years, I can show you. I have
Mm,
it all in my portal and I can show you. If you say, what about this school? I can show you. Are they generous? Are they not? And if you need that money and they're not generous, don't have your child apply there. That's the biggest problem parents get into. They leave it up to their child. Their child's, yes, I would love a view of Isla Vista at UC Santa Barbara. That's where I want to go. No discussion if they even have the major, no discussion if it's even affordable. And so they're doing the process incorrectly. And that's why there's so much student debt. Every one of my students gets at least $30,000 in scholarships. Every one of them, because it's not that hard. It's just knowing what you need to know. It's like learning a sport. If I gave you a soccer ball and said, go score, you'd be like, what? Like how? With my hands, with my, what do I do? But if I gave you a coach, you'd be able to score all day long. And so it's understanding. So either you can learn the rules of the game or you hire somebody who can, just like a CPA, a realtor, so on and so forth.
yeah, I'd love for you to share a little bit. I think I would push back on the soccer analogy a little bit because though I might know how to score, having played soccer for 10 years, I haven't done it for a while and I'm pretty out of shape. And so that would probably be pretty hard for me. And I think there's something to be said for also putting in the reps and actually doing the work to get better at it, which everyone
Sure.
has to do on their own. And I think I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about how to do that, right? Like, I know that I'm sure that your portal and your website and your book are great, but for the listeners here who maybe not everyone who is listening to this is going to be able to go work with you, I'm curious if you just have some advice for how to approach the problem.
Absolutely. So, first, I would say if you go to my website, I have 15 free resources.
Great. Yeah.
I- That's huge. So, if you go to collegereadyplan.com or .info, doesn't matter, you will have downloadable free resources. I believe that nobody should have to hire somebody, but somebody's got to do it, and it's not going to be your college counselor. So, I like to be very honest with families. Either it's going to be mom, dad, grandparents, right?
Mhm.
The student is deer in headlights. They have no idea how to do any of this, and they don't know how much $400,000 of debt is. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
not
last
really like
person.
connecting. Yeah.
There's no connection there. So I tell families Do it yourself is fine. What I did, I went to my son's high school counselor and she basically told him, don't be a doctor. They don't make money anymore. And my poor son was just like, dreams burst. And so I went back to school and I got my master's degree. And then I became a certified independent college consultant. And then I toured 25 colleges a semester. Again, you got to put in that, somebody's got to put in the time. It was
Yeah.
equivalent to a part-time job. So if you have the time and the desire, absolutely, at minimum, you can go to Amazon and get either College Admissions Plan Simplified, my newest release, and I break it down to here's the foundation, here's the walls, here's the ceiling, and step by step, because I understand that there's some families that just don't have the ability to do that. Now, most people think we're really, really, really expensive. Our pricing starts at $275. So if you can't afford that, college is going to be terrifying. So you want to be mindful. Is it an investment of time, money, or energy? That's how I explain test prep to my students. You could test prep on your own, and it's going to take you twice as long and it's going to be painful, or you invest in somebody who can get you there much quicker and a lot less painful. So it really comes down to which way you want to do it. But there are tons of free resources on my newsletter, my emails, and on my website.
Yeah, let's talk then about building a list of schools that are going to give a lot of financial aid. How do you go about figuring this out? I'm not asking you to tell me how you do your work for your clients, more just like as generally advice as a parent. I can assume that Harvard doesn't give a ton of financial aid to most people because they don't need to. What about Ohio State? What about, Purdue? I just don't know which ones are the ones that are really like generous and which ones are not. And is there something on their university website or maybe on the US News and World Report that gives you some kind of analytics about this?
Nothing. There is I've even asked ChatGPT. There's nothing that is true. There's a lot of fake, but there's nothing true. US News and World Report is the most fake report there is. It is completely inflated numbers. And it's super frustrating because that's what families are basing their decisions on. So the best thing a family can do, what I did for my master's degree, is I sat down the child, the teenager, and I said this, do you want a big school or a small school? Oh no. Do you want a public or a private? Oh no. Do you want East Coast, Midwest, West Coast? Oh no. And they need to know.
Yeah.
So step one, right? I'm just trying to, you're asking me to break it down to simplify it. That's got to be step one. Because if not, a parent will say, you were really good at Legos when you were 3. I think you should be an engineer and go to MIT. And all of the sudden you're like, whoa, where did that come from? And I know it's well meaning, but that doesn't make sense at all. So it
Well, and it's
has to,
also like they need to do their homework or else,
Mhm.
they're only going to get out of it what they put into it.
And they don't want to put a lot into it. They don't want to research. They don't want to look at every school's website. So to answer your question, the merit money is only because I see award letters all the time. Without those award letters, there's no way to know. Colleges are a business. They are not going to tell you the least amount they're going to allow you to pay. They're not.
Yeah.
It's like buying a house and saying, oh, here's the price, but I really only want this much. Nobody's ever going to do that.
Yeah. So then let's just talk about some broad strokes, like things to look for, right? I think one of the biggest ones is that something I've heard in the past is that people have this assumption from the past that public colleges are cheaper and private colleges are more expensive. And I think that maybe in the sticker price, it still reflects that, but a lot of private colleges give out a lot of scholarships. That's something I've heard from other guests. Do you think that's also true?
100%. 100%. The public schools are the most stingy because, one, look at the UCs, they get more applications than any other school in the world. So they don't have to give you a dime. And international students, they pay even more. So you're asking them for money and they're like, no, we just don't need to do that. So if you want to know the secret sauce is you help your child to be marketable. You help them to be that thing, that diamond in the rough where they're like, I need this child. I will fight for them. I will negotiate for them. I want them. That's how it is, right? It's like the best hardworking student has shown their value. Colleges pay for those students. It's a total business. Colleges need you as much as you need them. They have to fill their seats and pay their teachers and pay the maintenance. So they need you. And most people don't think about it as a business. They think about it as, oh my gosh, my kid just needs to get in. And I want to switch that mindset to be thinking, how can my child stand out so they want to throw money at him?
Mhm. Yeah, which kind of ties back to the beginning of our conversation, right? Which is it starts with basically trying to get them into some kind of maybe not like full life career plan starting in middle school, but at least with an idea of where they're trying to go. And I think that kind of ties a lot of this together is at the end of the day, it's like I run a test prep company, Achievable, and one of the jokes I make is the secret is that if you study more, you will probably do better. And it sounds similar to this, where it's like the secret is if you have a really good application, you'll probably get more merit aid. It's okay, how do I have a really good application? There's a lot of things you can do around the edges, right? And maybe, like you said, there's some exceptions where you see schools, maybe you're just not going to get merit aid, right? It's just not a thing. But in general, if you have a really good application, that's going to be your best shot no matter what. And yeah, I think then to wrap this up, I'd love to talk a little bit about the parents' role in guiding their child through this process. Because I think, like you just said, there are probably many parents who are listening to this and where do you want to go to college? Oh, I don't know. Do you want to be public or private? Oh, I don't know. And they're like, yep, yeah. So you're telling me to make my kid Steve Jobs at 13 years old, but they don't even know what they want to, where they want to go to college at all. Like they haven't seen the future or why it matters yet. So what kind of advice do you have for parents being in that kind of advocacy role and getting their child self motivated to do these
So every
things?
child is different and every child's motivation is different. And so I'm going to circle back to what I started with, and that is go and walk on college campuses, have
Mhm.
lunch with the students, help them to see that this is not just more homework, right? Open up those lines of communication instead of saying, what do you want to be? When they do something that they're gifted in, say they naturally led something, and you say, wow, John, did you realize everybody looked up to you? You're a natural leader. I am so proud of you. They're not going to be like, ding, ding, I'm a leader. As a parent, you can give them affirming words to that art is well beyond your years. That is something that you are gifted at, and we need to explore that a little bit deeper if you would like. And the same thing for private and public. They don't even know what that means until well into their sophomore year, because it really, for parents, a lot of times comes down to money. But instead, what I say, Sean, do you like when there's 12 or 15 kids in your class and your teacher pays you a lot of attention and you get your questions answered and you just feel part of this village? Or do you want to be like with 100 kids and hope nobody notices you and they don't take roll and they don't care that you're going to be there? Can you still get an A in that class? Those are very different questions than saying, do you want private or public? But that's exactly what we're talking about.
And I think it's just what's important to you. Do you really care about the learning side of things? Are you more interested in the social side of things? Are you more interested in maybe I don't want to say extracurricular activities because I don't know if that's the right word for them in college, but like the things in college that you do outside of school that are still related to maybe your job or major or even athletics or things like that, but are not necessarily things that you're doing just for social reasons. What's important to you? What kind of college experience do you want? And I think for a lot of kids, especially in middle school, they're like, what? So I think, yeah, taking them to campuses probably makes a lot of sense.
Just really have those conversations, or like when you are with friends and you say, "Oh my gosh, I met, your Aunt Susie. She's not really your aunt. She was my roommate in college." And they're like, "What?" And you're like, "Yeah, we were strangers and now we're like lifelong friends. And these are the kind of relationships you get to experience." And it's taking the unknown away and giving them a foundation of, "Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll think about that." But really, community service is the way to seal the deal,
Mhm.
because when you're serving another person, they're actually okay to not know how to do something and still do it. And then the final thing is allow your child to fail. So many people are worried about not letting their child fail, but teaching them while they're at home how to pick themselves up and how to learn, we call it failing forward. Not big epic fails, but little things that let them explore and go out on a limb a little bit, nothing drastic, but something they can go, wow, I had no idea that was going to be so challenging to raise $100 for that nonprofit.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Great. I think we've covered a lot today, and I wanted to just ask if there's anything that we missed on this topic before we wrap up.
The only thing that I would add is I want to let you know, parents, you've got this. I put forth through myself and I've done hundreds of other families, and it's not as scary as social media makes it sound. And then finally, if you have any questions for me, as a listener of Tyler's, I want to offer you a 30-minute discovery call by going to collegereadyplan.info. No obligation, but it's just a check in of, hey, what do you think about this? So that's it.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. This has been Shift, a college admissions podcast for a changing world, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Shellee Howard from College Ready. And you can get a free trial of Achievable's ACT and CLT courses by going to achievable.me. Use the code podcast to get 10% off.